Okay, to try and continue with the conversation, I think that the end of the last video, that the overlap in the grit where I choose to not go from one diamond grit to the next and follow the step procedure like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. I go 10, 9, 8, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. 5, 4, 3. There's overlap. There's repetition in the naming of the grit, but there's a difference in the substrate, so that overlap helps. So I do not go from one to the next to the next. I make some overlap in the mediums, and that would be maybe described as intermixing the diamonds and the lapping film. I'm not intermixing them. It's not a random mix. It is a planned overlap of the grits. Okay, I think that covered that clearly. On the other message, I don't use any stone grit that I don't need to use. And the only way to learn that is practice a lot. And that's where the break-in period is. See, we all look at the break-in period as a pain in the butt, as an obligation, and it's not until after you sharpen a lot that you realize that if you would have paid attention to what you were doing while you did the break-in, you could have experimented a lot and learn the cause and effect of your strokes and all that. Maybe some of you did do that. That's what it's for, and to practice on different steels with the different stones, so you know how coarse and rough a 100 stone is, and how a 50-80 is so much more coarse, even though the numbers don't seem to describe it that way. So I start as fine a grit as I can on any sharpening or polishing job, and do all those overlaps that I said if I'm following it to that progression. Each job that I do is different. A sharpening job is different than a polishing job, and a polished edge sharpening job is different than a mirror polished edge. It's just what you want to do, and you learned at the beginning by practicing, and I'm still learning and I'm still practicing, and I learn every time someone presents me with a question. It makes me think about everything that I do to explain it, and it improves my knowledge base by having to answer the question. So that is the purpose of making the Expert Corner group, is to invite this interaction. Okay, so yes, you could start a polishing job on a knife that doesn't have any damage at 600 or 800 grit. That's easy. That's not a problem. Now, when we're talking about the strokes, strokes are like the direction of your strokes in your regimen. That is something that each of us decide and work out, and we go with it. What works for us, that's what we use. You know, how you twitch your lure when you're fishing. If you get a bite, the next time you try to do it the same way, and you get a bite, you do it the same way. Well, that's what we're trying to do with sharpening. We get good results, we try to do it the same way. That's why I say it's result driven. It's from watching what I did with the microscope and seeing and trying different things. Now, because of that, what you say and what you do, don't think that it's right or it's wrong. Someone may use a scrubbing stroke. Someone may use a round-around stroke, someone may use an edge-leading stroke, and someone may use an edge-trailing stroke. I use them all at some place or another in my sharpening regimen on a knife. Not always. Sometimes I use them all. Sometimes I only do one thing. It depends what I'm doing. But I don't always use all the strokes every knife. I pick and choose what fits the needs. And that's all I can say about the strokes, is be proficient with them, round and round, scrubbing, whatever, so you recognize where you best can utilize that stone with that stroke on that place on the knife for that grit, for that time when you're doing that part of the repair. As the knife improves and gets smoother, you use different strokes. So be flexible. Don't be like a counter that I'm going to count 100 strokes on each side and call that grit done and move on. Be flexible in your strokes. Don't say I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to do a bunch of circles, never leaving the edge, and second go back and forth, and third sort of an arc with the paddle. If that's what works for you, but be flexible. Try some different stuff and some different orders, because by setting ourselves into that regimen, we may be missing the opportunity to learn how some other way may have been better. Even though you got good results, maybe try something else. Don't be so fixed in it. And what has happened is that there's been a lot of, let me stop here because I'm watching the time.